Kupata information unataka. Life ni journey pia ni process. For every step una make, it brings a different outcome. It always comes together.
Everything in life is a process. Life is a journey. Believe in the process. Everything in life comes together. Life is a journey. Believe in the process. Inspiring, informing, and impacting. This is the Konekt.
A very good evening to everybody who's just tuned in tonight, and we're here to just give you the best of information, just to help you with anything that is going on out there. So today we're just saying, if you have any questions, please remember at the second half of this segment, we'll be taking your questions, and we're joined by none other. He's been here before. He's just phenomenal. He's just great. That's the words I can use to describe him tonight. I think we take time before we appreciate big people, but today I think he's going to allow me and he's going to accept for me to just say, we appreciate you for everything that you do, and may you continue doing that, and may God increase you with that strength, because so many things he does, our guest, is that no one actually sees, but he's actually still doing it. So today we're joined by Justin Njuguna. He's been here before. He's not a guest. He's actually coming, and he'll one day be part of the Konekt. And we want to just say thank you, Justin, for taking your time tonight, just to be with us tonight. And just a brief introduction, just because we introduced Justin last time. I just want to just say that Justin has one wife, 2 children, and he's actually worked in the banking industry for over 18 years. That's amazing. So tonight, I know you're in the best hands ever. And he's actually very involved within the community. Anything that the community needs to know, Justin is there. So tonight, I don't want to take too much time, because we have a lot to cover tonight, and I want you to be informed so that you can make very good decisions in this, what we call COVID normal. So without further ado, I just want to invite and welcome Justin once again to the Konekt. Karibu sana, Justin.
Asante sana, Peter. Thank you for that glowing introduction, and we also appreciate you, Peter, for your initiative, and as a young member of the community, you are punching well above your weight. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Just a bit of a, Justin will allow me, just a bit of a background. I think for me, I find that Justin is very approachable, and this goes actually back a few years ago when I actually told Justin that I needed some advice from him. And ever since, Justin has always been picking up my call, and any advice that I need or any information, Justin is there. And for that, I just want to applaud you and say thank you so much. And tonight, I want us to start in a very good note, just maybe a recap of last time, Justin. So maybe you can give us a brief so that if someone missed the segment last time, they can actually be able to catch up, and then we continue from there. So Justin, just a brief recap of last time's segment.
Thank you, Peter. So last time, just looking at the key points from the session in October last month, we focused on events during the pandemic. We looked at, for example, the workplace. We looked at investments. We looked at financial services and banking and changes there within. So we touched on all that, and I think that's just a high-level summary of what we touched on last time. And I think it can be provided in full detail in the video that you have for last session. And just in the interest of time, I'll just maybe park it there if you don't mind, just to give us enough time for today's session, Peter.
Amazing, Justin. So today for our viewers tonight, we have a themed night. So tonight we have 3 themes where we're gonna start with building. We have growing and recovery. And in each of those segments, we're going to look at how do you build, how do you grow, and if you've done something which has not really worked, how do you recover? So Justin, in terms of building, because that's where we're going to start tonight, are people still investing? And where are people investing? Because that's actually a very key point that people are actually looking at. So the question is, are people still investing, Justin?
It's a good question, Peter. So I think just before I touch on that build, I'll probably touch on two questions that probably tie into the heading of today being life after lockdown. So some of the changes, like a common question is, what are some of the changes that we're witnessing so far in life after lockdown? And first one, just in terms of high level, is economic recovery in Australia is happening quicker than expected, albeit very early days, because Melbourne was locked down for over 260 days, which is one of the highest number of days in the world for any city. There's also flexible working arrangements are becoming the norm. There's also new English terms being used, new words like COVID normal. And there's also public health issues like vaccination and booster shots that are becoming a thing of life after the lockdown. There's also an item of lockdown fallout, whereby we are having to manage lasting adverse impacts of the lockdown. For example, mental health, both in adults and children, isolation, family relationship breakdown during COVID. And if you look at the impact of these changes, just a few things to touch on. One is because the recovery is occurring faster than expected, you find that the cost of living is actually rising despite the pandemic, which is ironical. The demand for health-related services will remain high, including, for example, mental health. And priorities are being realigned, both from government to business to families to individuals, with well-being being a topmost focus, Peter. So that's just one thing to mention, just as I come into the theme of today, which is build, grow, and recover. So the question you ask: are people still investing? Yes, they are. They are still, people are still they're still investing, and if I look at all asset classes, the values are actually rising and at record levels here in Australia. So if you're looking at property, if you're looking at the share market, even if you're looking at movable assets like cars, equipment, machinery, trucks, etc., these are all actually going up in value despite the pandemic. So that's just in terms of answering that question. In terms of people actually investing, yes, they are very much investing, and there's concerns, etc., that we can talk later. But the answer to that question is yes, people are investing very much so, and being quite optimistic, especially after the lockdown, curfew, and restrictions we've had in various cities in the country.
And maybe in terms of, you mentioned something about concerns, maybe, Justin. So maybe in terms of the concern before, because I know when people are trying to invest, they start looking at the concerns, what are their concerns and all that. So maybe what are some of the concerns that maybe just people might have just due to the investing and what people are looking to invest into? So are there some concerns you might bring to us tonight, Justin?
That's a good question. So yes, there are concerns, and there are pathways that people are investing in. There are things that people are investing in. There are things that people are not investing in. So the concerns people are having post-pandemic, I've itemized them. Firstly, is just uncertainty that's lingering from COVID-related effects. There's a fear of future lockdowns, curfews, restrictions to travel, movement, and people gathering. Another concern, especially for business owners and borrowers, is the potential rise of interest rates, which could impact borrowers' home loans, etc., and interest rates in general. Another concern people have is just inadequate emergency funds, because a lot of people used up funds, maybe supporting family members, etc. And there's that concern that they won't have enough if something was to happen and they need money to draw upon. Another concern that I've observed is that the inability to meet debt repayment obligations, especially with if your cash flow has been impacted by COVID. One other item to mention is just volatility. So with the impact of people's personal cash flow during COVID, that had a subsequent effect of people being impacted in their personal wealth. For example, if for example you owned a hospitality business, for example, and the value was X, and COVID came, and you didn't have any customers, etc., the value of that going concern will be depleted significantly. So there's that volatility in personal cash flow and personal wealth that is a key concern of people moving forward. Another concern people have is just unforeseen events. And for example, there's a concern people have with gaps in insurance cover, for example, relating to health insurance or even income protection, whereby there are many insurance providers out there that are excluding COVID or COVID-related effects in their policies, which is a major concern for a lot of people out there. So those are basically some of the concerns people have post-COVID, and that list, I think, will continue to grow as as the situation unfolds, because this COVID normal phase simply means that it's a phase where everything's been opened up, but COVID is very much within the community, and there's no end in sight to it. Peter.
So with such concerns, Justin, maybe out of your own advice, what can maybe someone do to safeguard themselves and not think so much about the concerns they might have, so that maybe they might go for that investment which they may be looking to buy, or maybe to buy a home or whatever. So how can someone get over such concerns, Justin? Maybe out of your own advice, what can you tell someone tonight?
It's a good question here. So if you're looking at, say, savings, even at a basic level, saving or investment. So let's, for example, let's start at the basic level, looking at just saving. At a basic level, the principle have actually remained the same. Nothing will really change. If you're looking at securing a stronger saving cash position, or just having a stronger financial position, I know there's some things that haven't changed that you were doing before COVID and will continue to do after COVID. So say, for example, if you want to save money, you have to first of all, for example, make a budget. You have to have a budget. And ideally, you have to also make sure that you're tracking your spending and you're monitoring your recurring expenses. A good saving a habit or tip is to have a separate savings account, just looking at a basic level. It's good to have that separate so you actually know exactly what you're saving. And avoid lifestyle debt. That's one thing that I would really advise people to keep an eye on. For example, and often that is funded by credit cards. So if you have a credit card debt, please, that should be a priority for you to actually make sure that you are clearing that at any given point. Control or self-control on impulses, impulse buying, you want to buy this, you want to buy that. So that, I think, also hasn't changed. That principle of just self-control hasn't really changed. And overall, you have to make sure that you adopt healthy habits and also positive company, around you, people who encourage you. And I'll touch on this quite a bit more later on in the session. So there's one, I think Warren Buffett said that, once you get paid, make sure you save before you spend. So you don't spend, then you save. That's something that something should be at the tip of the back of people's mind, or best practice, should I call it, in terms of just basic level how to save moving forward, sort of thing. And that's, I think, a discipline that people should really adopt. And that sort of counters a lot of the concerns, because many of the concerns, if you look at them, some of them you actually items that you can't actually do anything about. Like if the government decides to lock down, you can't do anything about it. Interest rate rises, you can't do anything about it. So it's good to control what you can control, whether it's habits, lifestyle, or impulses, etc. That is a good starting point. And and I will touch again later on in the session, maybe doing this from scratch again, because the COVID period has really depleted them in one way or the other, Peter.
Amazing. They always say that a penny saved is a penny earned. Maybe that's food for thought for someone out there who's trying to grow their savings. So Justin, we're gonna look on a more practical way, just maybe how can, when you want to get into the housing business, so buying a home, let's say, maybe buying a property, is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to go for that property you've always been eyeing on. And on top of that, I just want you to talk about how you actually can save up for, maybe people talk about house deposit, or maybe what do you require to actually even get a home. So first question is, Justin, is it a good time to buy a home? And then the other second part is, how do you prepare to actually get that home you've actually been wanting? So over to you, Justin.
Yes. So in terms of, because we live in this country, and that owning one's home is one of the the to-do list, or the items to tick, and aspirations of many, both migrants and those who are born here. And I'll sort of touch on that. I'll mention quite a few things here, just to really try and capture as much information as possible for our viewers. So in terms of buying a house, looking at, even if it's owner occupied or first home buyers, etc., it's a very personal decision, and it's determined by quite a few factors. First and foremost being affordability, your life goals or strategy. Why do you want to buy a house in the first place to begin with? Is it the right thing for you to do? Also, your risk appetite. Is it within what you're willing to engage? Your life stage also is important, because how much money the bank will lend you is directly related to, for example, your age, for example. And I touched on this in the last session. Your priorities in life, that also is, what do you want to do in your life in general? Your family, is it health, or etc. So that's also, all these factors play a role in your decision to actually make the property purchase investment. And people have various strategies. And one common one that's emerging, and I touched on a few of this in the last session, one common one is called rent vesting, whereby you rent where you want and you buy where you can afford. So this is something that is becoming a reality for many. And, it's because of housing prices being so expensive. So once you sort of make that decision that, yes, I want to, go ahead and actually, because I'm going to live in this country in the long term, I want to go ahead and buy a property, there's some items to consider, because most of the time you'll find that you have to engage a lender or a bank to actually lend the money and borrow the money. So the items to consider that the bank will actually factor in when looking at whether or not to actually lend you the money. The first thing they look at is your income. Another item they look at is just the nature of your employment and your employment history. They look at your savings track record, your deposit, and the deposit is directly related to what's called the lending value ratio, LVR. So if the bank is wanting to lend you 80%, for example, then you have to come up with 20. If they're lending you 90, you have to come up with 10. Your spending habits also is a factor that the bank will look at in determining how much to lend you, and this comes in the expenses. So this is something to make sure you take control of as you come to engage the bank for banking funding support. Your credit score is also important. Your assets liability tell in terms of how your net position is, and all these items add up to determine what's called your borrowing capacity. And once your borrowing capacity is determined, the bank tells you, yes, you can go out and we can happy to support you with a figure of X. A lender will often give you what's called a pre-approval. Now, a pre-approval, it's very important that you look at the terms and conditions of that pre-approval. And that's to make sure that if you have a pre-approval in hand, it's not actually a final approval. It's not a final decision by the bank to lend you money. It's just an indicative it's an indicative approval, saying the bank saying that, yes, we're happy to lend you the money based on certain conditions. So say, for example, if the bank approves you to buy a certain type, buy a residential property, and you go out and buy a farm, well, that's not within the terms of the pre-approval. So very important that you actually pay attention to the pre-approval. And the reason why the bank goes through all this trouble to do the assessment is because the bank and lenders want to make sure that they're in the business of lending money to be repaid, not to litigate, not to take you to court and try and get and sell the house, etc. Because that's one misconception that people have, that if I don't pay for the house in this country, especially, well, they'll just sell the house. No, the bank is not really, lenders aren't really in that sort of, that's not the aim of the lender. So that's important to note. Now, a few items to touch in terms of buying a property in itself. A common question is that what do I consider when buying a property? What are the items should be at the back of my mind? One, for example, that I see people really consider is, for example, capital growth. That's the future potential for the property to rise in value, and you find that maybe a freestanding home will have a better potential to go up in value than, say, for example, a townhouse, for example, or an apartment. Location is also another factor that people look at in terms of determining what type of property to buy. And location means proximity and access to schools, amenities, neighborhood safety, public transport, and undergoing or potential to undergo, suburb regeneration, for example, or major infrastructure. Another item with location is called a bridesmaid suburb. These are suburbs that are, say, lesser known, lower priced, and adjacent to well-known suburbs. That bridesmaid suburb, from a personal note, is one that I used when I actually purchased my first home many years ago. Another item to consider in what type of property you should purchase is the actual type of property itself. Should you want a freestanding house in the backyard? Do you want a townhouse? Do you want to live in the country, etc.? So that's also another factor. The age of the property is also a factor. Older properties, for example, will have more maintenance. Yes, they have a charm and character as vis-a-vis a new build, but you find that a new build also will have less maintenance. But that less maintenance depends on the quality of the builder, work done by the builder. The age of the property also, if part of your plan is to eventually rent out the property, you find that a new property, if you build a new property, you then have the opportunity to actually, if you rent it out in future, you have a potential to claim depreciation on that property if it becomes an investment property. That's a factor there to consider. Property features is another one. Do you want a garage, a backyard, natural light, home office space, especially with COVID? And also something else that people consider is what's called potential rental demand and yield. If you're buying the house now, you may want to see, well, if I rent it out in future, if you're still in this country, or even sometimes go back home to Kenya, what's the potential to actually rent the property? So that's a few factors people consider when it comes to the type of asset to purchase. The last thing I want to touch on here is just in terms of costs related to property ownership in Australia. That's one thing that people are sometimes not fully aware of. I'll start off with the obvious ones, and then we'll work my way downwards. First one is stamp duty, and that may be waived for first home buyers, and it's basically levied by the state government. And usually, this is a tax levied as a percentage of the property value when the property changes hands. Another cost to consider is lender's mortgage insurance, or LMI, and this is an insurance premium that a borrower may choose to pay if the loan value ratio is above the percentage stipulated by the lender. Sometimes that can be about over 80%. Another factor is what's called land tax. Now, this applies for investment properties and charged annually by the state or territory government. Legal fees when you buy a property, there'll be conveyancer fees and legal fees that will be required. And again, this goes by state to state because a property purchase can be a complex process with plenty of legal implications. So it's a good idea to actually engage a solicitor to help you navigate the process of settlement. And in fact, in some states, property buyers are required to engage a conveyancer or solicitor for the transaction. Other costs to consider may be, depending on if you're buying an investment property, is a quantity surveyor, and they may help you do drawing up with what's called a depreciation schedule for the property and work out how much tax deduction you can get in the event you rent out the property. Next one is a pest and building report. That I think is a good idea to obtain, especially for first home buyers. And it's important just to carry out a professional inspection of the property by a licensed property inspector for structural soundness before you commit to a purchase. This is done just to preempt the discovery of internal damage that may be expensive to repair soon after you bought a house. Mortgage registration fee is a nominal fee, but it's also another fee that is incurred with acquiring a house, and it's a government fee and depends from state to state, and it's a one-off fee. Another fee to consider is insurance cost. It's why it may not be legally mandated per se. I think the lender may require it to settle a property, building insurance. But I think and if you're buying a unit or apartment, that may be included in the strata fees, in body corporate. But I think it's very prudent to make sure that that's in place in case of unforeseen events. Other costs you may incur: council rates, capital gains tax if you sell the property, if applicable. So just a few items there to mention, just to really holistically cover in terms of acquiring a property, what's involved. And, I could go on for a long time, but I thought I'd just cover the highlight items, Peter, just to make sure that I help people out there just to get an idea of what's involved, Peter.
Wow, I think this is a very definitive and very detailed analogy of how and what to do when you want to buy a house. I do want to thank you, Justin, for that. And I think people should start paying. Anyway, I'm just kidding. People should start paying because we're bringing you all this information. But all this information is for free because we want to help out for the community, just for you to make the right decision and not to get into any trap. And then just, something that maybe is lingering at the back of people's mind. This is just my own question. Does that mean it will take an arm and a leg for me to actually get a house in Australia? So just in your own words, does it take an arm and a leg to actually get a house in Australia?
It all depends on what you want to buy. So, just really affordability is a big factor there. So if you're looking at just your budget and looking at how much deposit you need, and it's very much a long-term investment. So avoid you can't buy today and sell tomorrow per se. So and also the government has a lot of incentives. It's good to sort of engage either your bank, etc., or your broker, just to really give you an idea of the up-to-date incentives available, especially for first home buyers. There's a lot of incentive out there for them to actually engage in proper investment because the government needs to stimulate the economy during this time of COVID normal or COVID.
And just a follow-up question. We're about to go on a break, but because after that, we're just going to go and grow and recovery. But I want to understand, Justin, does it mean you have, how long do you think, or maybe on maybe a layman's language, do you think it might take me 10 years, 5 years, 2 years to actually get a good saving to get a house? Or can you say it depends with how you save the money? Because most people think, I'll need a savings for maybe 5-10 years. What, in your own terms, Justin, how easy is it to save, and what is the percentage of maybe the money needed to actually put a deposit for a house?
Yeah, if you look at the savings part, you sort of maybe have to work backwards, because if you're looking to buy a house of say 600,000, which is typical for first-home buyers, and the bank or the lender tells you need 10%, then you have 60,000 as a figure for you to work with. Then you look at in terms of how can you raise that per week, per fortnight, per month, etc. And you'll be surprised if you actually put focus on it. Some people take, in fact, some people actually take a year or 2 or 3 longer, but it really all depends on that. Going back to the savings question, what do you need to start doing and stop doing to be able to save that money? Because that will determine how quickly you get to that, whether it's 5% or 10% deposit. And the incentives really is something to be considered, because not having to pay stamp duty, which is about 5%, that saves you about 30,000 on that 600 grand house. So there's a lot of incentives there that the state and federal government have in place that first home buyers can really take advantage of. And but once you determine that figure of 5 or 10%, then work backwards and see how much per week, fortnight, a month can I save, and then you stretch that out and then see how long you actually need to get to that figure, while adopting good habits, so to speak, good savings habits, Peter.
So it means you just have to postpone that holiday, or maybe buying that expensive car for you to actually realize your house. It's actually doable, if you put it in that way where you have a figure of maybe let's say 50 or 60,000, then you just have to narrow it down to how much do I need to save per week. So we're gonna go quickly on a break, and then you're gonna come back. When you come back, we'll get your questions, and I'll ask Justin more questions so that we actually get to understand and get a good perspective of how to save and what strategies can you use to save your money. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back after this short break. So see you on the other side.
This December, the Konekt stories return. Be sure to join us this coming December with great stories lined up for you. Be sure to tune in every Friday. The Konekt stories return.
I drove to Sydney, and during that time we were still like working from home.
Yeah.
So it worked out for me. So we drove to Sydney. We got to Sydney at around like 1 a.m. By the time we were going to sleep, it was like around 3 a.m. So at 3 a.m. I slept, and then I got up because I start my work at around 9 a.m. So at 9 a.m. I logged in, so I started working. So 9 a.m. and my English exam was booked for 5:30.
Yeah.
So after doing the PTE, I went and saw like a few friends, and then by the time we were leaving Sydney to Melbourne, it was midnight.
Okay.
So and by 9 a.m. I have to like log into work. So when you put the use the GPS, it was estimating we'd be getting to Melbourne at around 10 a.m. So I just drove. So halfway through the journey, I found out that hey, I didn't even get the scores that I want.
At that point in time, I was just thinking of, okay, I need to finish this because it's a door opener for many things. I knew it depends. This is my career line, and I've chosen this, and it's my passion. Now, I knew like, given the setbacks in the first semester, even though it was a deterrent at that point in time, I had to leverage it somewhere along the road. Now, I had to work hard for it, and when you say work hard for it, is now you have to work hard to get more finances to finance that extra unit that in that semester, and then the workload of it would also be more. That was now the challenge. At that point, I remember I would mention special thanks to Kevin. He supported me during that time. I remember sharing the story with him, and he was like, oh, even me, I'm going through the same predicament, let's push on. At least having to see that person whom you're pushing on together, okay, I'm struggling here, he's struggling as well, it gives you that motivation. And I would say, why not that point in time that I was living with him, perhaps maybe I would have given up.
That was just very, very informative session we just had. And I think sometimes we never look at how much resources we have as a community and what we can actually achieve. And this is just an attestment that we can actually be able to do and get all the information that we need. It's only a matter of seeking. And one good book says, when you seek, you find. When you knock a door, the door will be open. So for me, I knocked and Justin opened the door, and it's just amazing. What he's sharing tonight is just, some people have actually stayed in this country for a very long time and have never had such information. But us, we have the privilege of having that information, and we are just grateful. And we want to go to this great part where, Justin, we started off with building, and we understood how a bit to build, how to change habits and save a little bit here, and know what target you have. If your deposit is about 60,000 or 50,000, just walk backwards and know what you're saving. Change your habits, and also look at the cost of having a house, and just look at in all the fine print so that you don't make a mistake, and we call them very costly mistakes. So, and now we're going to a very good point where we want to understand now, how do you really grow? What are the strategies? And I want us to start from there, Justin. I want us to start with that point. In terms of savings, this is the part where we're talking about growth. In terms of savings, what are some of the strategies which you've seen or is actually being used out there, Justin?
Thanks, Peter. So, in terms of the grow part of our theme tonight, there's a few strategies I've observed that people are adopting to financially grow and prosper. So, the first one that I've observed is I'll call it professional advice. As financial services and investment become more complex, I find that people are relying less on grapevine and actually engaging professional advice. You know, they're attending seminars, attending sessions like this one, for example, and they're seeking material, and that's both from here and in Kenya, so to speak, and even to the point where they're actually getting tailored advice, engaging a financial advisor to actually sit down with them, have a roadmap for the financial journey, because it's getting quite complex in terms of both whether it's the environment, the legislation, there's products, etc. So, professional advice is one thing that I'm seeing that people are adopting as one of the strategies to actually grow financially. One of the next item I see people are actually adopting is just what's called formal and well-established financial services channels. So these are basically channels and where people are actually channeling resources and investment funds via formal channels. Especially this applies more to people looking at investing back home. So they're engaging more formal channels, for example, banks or reputable investment groups, rather than using relatives and friends to actually, go and invest their hard-earned money in, say, and more, say, for example, buy real estate, etc. So that engagement of formal, well-established channels is a welcome change, because there's been many a story of people losing life savings by using informal channels to invest. And which has ended up with quite detrimental effects. So that's another one of the strategies I've seen people adopt. The next one is what I'm calling collective investment. So a collective investment or pool investment is when investors pool their money together to invest in larger sized opportunities. Now, this applies to, say, for example, investment groups or chamas, as we call them, circles, or what I'm calling SPVs for specific projects. That's special purpose vehicles. I'm referring to here in Australia, or even in Kenya, and that's more for a short or medium term. Now, an example of an SPV is whereby, say, for example, and I see this common with, say, Asian communities, is where two or more families come together to be able to purchase a property in a suburb that they themselves can't afford individually. And then they do a development. And then once they say build, two or whatever more properties, they each individually get one each and are able to own that asset that individually they'll not be able to do so. So that's one thing that we've observed that is actually taking place. With collective investment, going back to more investment groups, chamas, etc., some merits include having access to more funds for investments. So if you pool money together, you can be able to, engage or buy investments that you not individually may not be able to do so. You can leverage on each members of that investment group can leverage on each other's skills and knowledge. So avoid reinventing the wheel. So that can be quite helpful. Issues to consider when you come together and pool investments, especially if you formalize that arrangement. Say, for example, if you form a company and where you have shareholders, etc., some of the issues you need to consider are, for example, tax implications. You have structure, ownership, and another important item is liability to be considered, especially if there's bank borrowing involved. Management of an investment is also an issue to consider, especially if the assets are located cross-border overseas. So if you have a group where you have assets here and also assets in Kenya, then you need to work out how will you manage that asset, especially if none of the members are in one country, so to speak. Now, depending on the structure of the group, you just need to be mindful that the structure of the group itself may be as strong as its weakest link. So if you have people coming together to achieve a financial goal, if you have one person there or two or who are actually not playing their role, then that would significantly impact the group itself. So those are some of the strategies I'm seeing people adopting to be able to grow financially. And Peter, so that's what I've observed.
And in terms of, you mentioned something very, I think it's not something I've seen within our community, but I'll maybe just ask, maybe when you say people coming together, like to buy a house and everything, is that a legal channel? And how can someone actually go about doing that? If maybe, let's say I want to join hands with another family member, maybe a brother, sister, how does actually that work? Maybe just to elaborate a bit more, and then we're gonna take it from
So
there.
say it's fairly common in Asian communities whereby they engage, they say for example form a company, and two or more families come together. So say for example your family and mine, those are four individuals, and we want to live in a particular suburb for particular reasons. Say for example access to schools or capital growth potential. So we come together and we actually become joint shareholders and directors of that company. We end up purchasing that asset, and that becomes a joint investment. Now, the aim of that eventually is to ideally, say, for example, build, say, a duplex, two dwellings, and you live in one and we live in the other. Or it can be to buy and sell, and that becomes actually a form of investment in itself. Now, in that sort of scenario, there is bank lending involved. So it's very important that each couple is aware that that arrangement does impact on their individual financial position. So when it comes to coming together to in a format like that, it does happen. It's fairly common, but you just have to go in with eyes opened. A common saying we have is that if you are in that sort of arrangement, you are joined at the hip. So there's no second thoughts, etc. So, and they tend to be what's called SPV because they're purpose-built vehicles whereby it's for a specific project, and once we finish, each one goes their own, and so that's how that comes about, Peter.
And maybe to just maybe come to the other part which you wanted to look at tonight, what are some of the pitfalls maybe or maybe you might tell our viewers tonight in terms of financial pitfalls? What are some of the pitfalls that maybe you might be aware of that we may tell our viewers tonight, Justin?
Yes, this is a good hot topic, and I'll touch on quite a few, and then we'll just look at as part of this recovery part of theme. Pitfalls that I see people getting into and that lead to financial disaster are as follows. Top of the list, get quick rich schemes. This is whereby they take advantage of a shortcut mentality, and the culprits in these schemes tailor and target specific demographics. For example, the youth, retirees, or vulnerable members of the community, for example, in lower socioeconomic areas, or people already experiencing financial hardship with the promise to do better for them. So that's point number one. Secondly, common issues is a lack of mentorship. This often leads to people repeating mistakes of others in the past. So that's something that is fairly common. Next one is a lack of information or misinformation. So that often tends to lead to what's called poor decision making and indecisiveness. So that's one other item. Next is mindset, where one believes that one can't do or is too late for them or is not good enough to achieve a certain financial goal. Another one is antisocial habits. Top of the list is problem gambling. Nothing sucks your life savings away like gambling. So that should be a red flag there in a big way. Other antisocial habits are, substance abuse, alcohol and drugs. They can really lead to financial disaster. Next is influence, where you have, bad, the saying goes that bad company corrupts good principles. So careful who you hang around with, because they can influence your life journey in a big way. Next item I want to mention is a lack of self-care. This one, what it means is that basically is there are people who actually commit too much of all resources to other people and neglect themselves. This often happens when you have commitments to family members, say overseas, or friends, etc. So that's something that I've also observed leading to a financial disaster. Another one is relationship breakdown. That's self-explanatory, whereby assets have to be split and sold, etc. The next one is one that I'll touch on later on a bit more, is what's called financial abuse. This is a form of abuse where one intimate partner has control over the other's access to financial resources, and which diminishes the victim's capacity to support themselves, or force them to depend on the culprit financially, etc. So that is becoming quite common, and is a very quite sad actually. So those are sort of the pitfalls and problems we're seeing that lead to financial disaster, Peter.
And talking of pitfalls and problems, Justin. So we've looked at a few, and I just wanted maybe to enlighten our viewers tonight, Justin. How can you even avoid such pitfalls? Because some of them we actually make them ourselves. It's not that it's the circumstances or whatever. We actually the ones doing it. So how can someone actually avoid such pitfalls, Justin?
Yes. So thanks, Peter. So avoiding pitfalls. The theme is simple: prevention is better than cure. And address each of the pitfalls that I mentioned, and how one can go about avoiding them. The first one is get quick rich schemes. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And that shortcut mindset is one that should be really, one should really avoid, because that's what leads to people falling for get quick rich schemes. So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Lack of mentorship. Mentorship is a two-way street, and a mentor's key role is to guide, support, and provide direction. So really, it's something that both the mentee and the mentor have to be on the same page, but it's one that can have avoid a lot of problems in terms of one's financial position. Lack of information and misinformation. Well, these will probably tell people to make a deliberate effort to make fruitful connections with people who are progressive and positive, who can actually encourage them. So they're there in the community, and you just have to really make that deliberate effort, because that lack of information and misinformation is quite common. They say misery loves company. So just bear that in mind. Mindset. The issue of mindset really calls for self-reflection. If you have a mindset issue, I'd say there's an opportunity there to just unlearn habits and ideas that are retrogressive and keep you stagnated financially or in life. So that one is really one that a self-initiative, I dare say. Antisocial habits, when it comes to problem gambling or substance abuse, I think this one here needs some deliberate action and actually seeking professional support and counseling. And the root, I think the root cause needs to be identified, and one needs to take steps to address it, because that is one item there that does need to professional support and advice to be just engaged for antisocial behaviors. Influence, well, just bear in mind that you become the company you keep, so choose wisely when it comes to influence. Self-care is in the aeroplane emergency procedures. They normally say that fasten your life jacket first before you assist others. The more stable you are financially, or the more stable your financial base, the more capacity you have to support others. That's just one part I'll say there. When it comes to relationship breakdown, they say love is blind and marriage is an eye opener, which is true. I think part of pre-marriage counseling really should include financial matters to avoid unpleasant surprises or even separation. For married couples, I'll probably say that what I've observed is that what tends to work, among other things, is honesty, understanding if the spouse has, especially one of the spouses, has financial commitments to support family, say overseas. Consensus is important, just having a joint approach and goals. Discipline, you need to move in the same direction. Accountability, just having open and candid, communication. Financial abuse. Now, here you have to forgive me because I'm going to get quite candid here. Now, here I need to mention that one needs to be aware of predators, and they exist, both male and female. And this will continue. It's quite common in the financial services industry, and it's talked about a lot. And it will continue being an issue as the cost of living and the value of assets continue to rise. So I'll probably say that you need to exercise caution when entering into relationships. And a notable mention here is when it comes to dating and debt. Now, if a partner acquires debt for the sole or primary benefit of the other, or debt is transferred from one person to another to their detriment, specifically to this situation, when that person becomes financially liable for another person's or the partner's debt after being convinced or misled into taking debt in their own name, there's a name for that condition, and it's a 3-letter acronym. The first letter is S, second letter is T, the last letter is D. The first two, you know what they are, and yes, it's what you're thinking. The last one, D, stands for debt. Debt. So I'll park that there. Thanks, Peter.
I'm loving this, Justin. I'm just gonna say I'm loving this, and I just wanna just get a few questions before we go on to whatever we have to cover tonight, because we're running out of time very quickly. But I want to say thank you to Thiongo tonight, wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in. Steve Opisa, as always, thank you so much. So for Thiongo is asking, Justin, in terms of interest rate, which is what is better this time, to fix or to leave it floating? So in that he's saying maybe a variable, or is it to fix the rates in terms of housing? That's what he's asking. And then after that, Stephen is asking you, what are your thoughts on cryptocurrency market, forex market, due to volatility that comes with such investments? So Justin, the questions are over to you.
So with fixed rates for home lending, that's actually becoming very common in the bank. There's a prediction that rates will go up next year, and more so in 2023. So a lot of people are fixing their rates for, say, 2 or 3 years, no more. So, and in doing so, that has to be in line with your own financial plans. If you're looking at selling a house or you need an offset account, etc., don't fix because everyone is doing it. One strategy you can adopt is to part fix, part variable, but fixing is actually become very, very common at the moment in the bank because there's an inkling that there's going to be rates are going to go up next year. So that's just to answer that question. Cryptocurrency, that is the elephant in the room. That needs like 10 sessions on its own, I must say, but it is a new asset class. It has become mainstream and highly volatile, and governments and are really well behind that, and are really well behind in terms of getting up to speed with what's happening in that digital world. And especially for the younger generation, it's going to become more mainstream in the future. So I'll just park that there because that is a very, very, that's a Pandora's box to open, Peter. So if you don't mind, so in the interest of time, I'll park that there for now.
I think they always say whoever is wise can actually, take whatever you need to take from them and do the right thing. But we're gonna leave it there, and then Justin, we're gonna go to a very, very important part of any recovery. And this is maybe after you've fallen into one of those pitfalls or the problems or a disaster. How can someone start, a new beginning? How can you even start and recover financially from a financial disaster? Over to you, Justin.
Thanks, Peter. So recovery from a financial disaster, I'm a firm believer it's never too late to actually recover. So I'm a very, very firm believer in that. So I think the first step in recovering from a financial disaster is just a reality check, a self-reflection. Just accept the situation and take responsibility for your part if there is one. And importantly, remain calm. The objective here is just to avoid denial and accept your situation, regardless of what it is. Second part, assess the damage. Take stock, write it down on a piece of paper. When you write it down, it becomes real, reality for you. So the objective here is just to determine the actual financial impact of what's happened to you. Next step I would say is just define your goals. You need to determine where you want to go financially, depending on what led you to that disaster. For example, you want to repay debt, that's a goal. You want to rebuild your savings. You want to recover assets lost. Or maybe you want to restore your reputation or credibility. That's also a goal, because financial disaster sometimes leads you to a position where you're unable to meet commitments elsewhere, and you lose that credibility or reputation. The objective of defining your goals here is to arrive at what's called SMART goals, and the acronym people are well aware of: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely goals. Just time-bound goals that, hey, these are the goals and this is how I want to get there. Next one, create a plan. Just have a plan. This is a roadmap to achieve the goals you've defined. And the objective is just to have a clear pathway to what I call the light at the end of the tunnel. Because often when someone is in a financial disaster, it's just darkness. There seems to be nowhere to go, but these steps just help one have a clear pathway to a light at the end of the tunnel. The last step is just to take action. These are practical day-to-day steps that require discipline, encouragement, mentorship, and prayer. And ensure to acknowledge and celebrate the milestones along the way. That's something that sometimes we forget to do when you're in the recovery phase. So if you're looking at, say, for example, paying a debt and it's X amount, if you've paid 10% of it, that's a milestone. 20%, 40, 50, like that. So that's just in terms of how one way that you can actually be able to recover from a financial disaster, because it's never too late, Peter.
I think we're going very well, Justin, and I like the very broken down and very tangible information that someone can be able to use out there. And I hope people will use this information, because it doesn't just come easy. Sometimes you have to pay a lot of money to see a consultant just to be told how to do, what to do, and all that. So please take all the information and use it wisely. And just as we're trying to wind up, Justin, mental health and financial well-being. So because all this is happening, someone's mental health might be not really good. What is the relationship between mental health and finances? Maybe, Justin, in your own layman's language.
Thanks, Peter. So it's a very important topic, especially in the COVID and post-COVID, not really post-COVID, COVID normal. Now, mental health and financial stability are actually strongly linked. Financial stress can actually add to a mental illness, and experiencing a mental illness can actually add to financial stress. So one can lead to the other, or make another worse. Now, financial stability can actually bring security and peace of mind, because one is able to support oneself, own family, extended family members, and even the community. Now, I'll be candid at this point because, I know me, I speak the truth. Now, this is just to help people who are depending on, one situation. If your family relies on you financially, do not compete or compare yourself with someone who relies on their family financially. Very important. Financial well-being can also contribute to severe mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, and high stress levels. That's financial, struggle, so to speak. And financial-related stress can actually trigger these conditions, and one can have an adverse effect, on your ability to work, socialize, integrate in community, build healthy relationships, even parent your own children. That's how adverse the effect of financial-related stress can be. So the two are actually quite closely related, and especially because we live in a society where really financial stability is actually, or financial well-being, I want to call it, is actually very important. Note, I haven't said having a lot of money, just financial well-being. Thanks, Peter.
And just maybe on your own perspective, how do you balance that so that you actually have a balanced perspective in terms of your mental health and financial well-being? Because some people really, when they have money, they're really happy and they are a happy go. When the account is actually going low, is actually they're very grumpy. How can you actually be able to counter that, Justin, in your own, maybe from your own experiences? How do you balance that so that even if you have a little, you're still happy and your mental health is actually good in check? You don't have any mental illnesses. So over to you, Justin.
Thanks, Peter. Actually, what I find is that, just observations, is that one of the key aspects of financial well-being is actually not to focus on the money, is to focus on the healthy relationships around you. Because the money really is, if you focus on the money, then that's what's happened. If the money goes up, your mood is good. Money goes down, your mood worsens. So having healthy relationships around you really is actually one of the key aspects I find when it comes to financial well-being. Because when you have much, you still your mood is fine. When you have little, your mood is not. You don't become obviously all of a sudden really significantly stressed, so to speak. So I think that's a good starting point. Not to actually focus on the money in itself for financial well-being, Peter.
I like very, very, very wise words right there, because you might find someone is on a roller coaster because money can actually be made and money can come and can go at any given time. I've even seen millionaires becoming to nothing and people from nothing to becoming millionaires. So the focus should not be on money. It should be on the networks you have or the support system you have around you. That's very powerful. And then maybe, Justin, maybe this is my question before we go to your closing remarks. And if there's any other question tonight, please write your question right there before we close down. And I want to say thank you to Pauline. He's saying good insights and very informative, Bwana Justin. Thank you so much, Pauline. So in your 18 years of banking, Justin, how old who's the oldest person you've ever seen get a house? Because some people think it's too late to actually get a house, but in your own terms or with your insight and what you've seen over years, what is the latest age that someone can actually acquire a home, Justin?
Good question. So when it comes to acquiring a home, we've had people in who are 60 years old acquire a home. So it all depends on your budget and what you're buying. So that is that age factor. Yes, I mentioned last time that the banks tend to look at age 75 as when your owner-occupied residence should be repaid, and hence your home loan will be 75 minus your age to determine the term of the loan. But that issue of that item of it's too late, it doesn't apply, because the people who actually end up, as I said, buy a property, invest in property where they can afford, for example, in the country. And that then becomes a long-term investment. At least they have something to speak of, so to speak. Others have a different strategy. They actually go ahead and invest in Kenya because that's what the strategy is. The issue with that is the do nothing is what is a big problem. The do nothing there is what can have quite significant, even mental health issues. If you get to a certain age and realize, by the way, there's nothing that I've done in my 30, 40 years of actually earning an income. So, especially living in the diaspora, where actually where work is there, you're actually earning an income for most of the time. So even here, but so when it comes to, if I'm to answer your question in terms of acquiring a mortgage in Australia, you've had people who are 60 go ahead and get a house, and life continues, and that's what fits their strategy, which is fine.
Amazing. There you had it, people. So if you say you're too old or you're too young, it's never the wrong time, or it's never too early. So if you want to get that home, go ahead and get that home. Seek all the information you need so that you make all the right information. So maybe just to finish off, if there's no any other question, maybe Justin, you might give your final remarks tonight and any advice that you would like to give the community tonight. The floor is yours, Justin. And I want to say also thank you for the opportunity and time that you've created for us. But over to you your final remarks, Justin.
Thanks, Peter. So, and thanks for the opportunity to share today. It's been good. It's been detailed, but hopefully it'll be benefit to the audience. So, one thing about the pandemic is that the pandemic has reminded us that the greatest asset we have is time. So, I think if I was to point out one item only, is that we need to make a deliberate effort to make the best use of our time, because and we need to, and part of that is to really build ourselves, build each other, build the community. And as I mentioned last time, we need to make sure we are leaving behind a communal stepping stone for the next generation. And so for ourselves, we know self-care is important, but make good use of the time you have, because that is the greatest asset. Not money in the bank, not the friends you have, time. Because as long as you're here, you have time. So it's important that you actually make very productive use of it, because that is what will be holds you accountable in terms of how you spent your time. As I say, time is money, so time, people, whether it's look after yourselves, look after each other, and I think together we can be able to, especially in platforms like this, be able to really build each other and inform each other, equip each other, and enlighten each other, Peter. So those are just my closing remarks. Thanks.
Amazing. So tonight, you've earned your flowers, and sometimes it takes longer for us to appreciate the people who are around us, and we wait for it to be too long. And today, I just want to say, Justin, we really appreciate you as a community, because I've been with you in this journey and I've seen what you do, and sometimes people don't really realize what it takes to be where you are in the seat you take, because at any given time, any information can come in and the information needs to go out. And you're always there to receive the information, to do what is necessary and send it to our community. And for that, Justin, we want to say thank you so much. And the only person who can actually repay you is God. And God is going to see you through, and God is going to bless you. But tonight we want to appreciate you, and we say we see all the effort, because you have a full-time job, you have 2 kids in a family, and you also have the community at heart. That's actually 3 full-time jobs. And for that, we want to appreciate you, and we want to say thank you so much, Justin. And we appreciate you as a community. Even if we don't say so much or even often enough, we want to say we appreciate you, and we see the effort that you put in. And tonight, we want to say also thank you to everybody who's been with us tonight, joining in every week. There's some people joining us every week and just tuning in and supporting us and giving us that love and the good vibes and questions. And every week we see the effort and we see the support, and we want to say thank you so much. And tonight, I hope that everything that Justin has shared is going to help you out. If you have any further question, please reach out to Justin, or you can reach us to us, and we can try and arrange that interview, not really an interview, just that part where you can actually have a one-on-one with Justin, and so that you can actually make a very informed decision, and you're gonna actually get the help you need. So for tonight, thank you so much for watching. If you have a story out there you'd like us to come and tell your story, or you'd like us to be part of the story or part of your journey, we're very happy to come and share that journey. And you can reach us on our socials, which are actually down there on the screen. If you have my number, you can always call me, and we are happy to come and share your story. But for tonight, we just want to say thank you for
and thank you very much, Peter. Thanks
Thank
to
you
yourself,
for-
Peter.
thank-
Thanks
thank
for
you so much,
everything,
Justin.
and thanks for the effort you take. We appreciate you too. Thanks for the platform. This is a seed that will grow into a big, big tree and provide shade for many generations to come. So, hongera sana. God bless you and your family, and thanks for the efforts.
Amazing. That is Justin right there saying thank you. And for us from the Konekt and everybody who's involved, there's a big team behind me. I just want to say thank you, and we appreciate you, the team and everybody else. And for us tonight, we're gonna leave it there. We're not gonna add, we're not gonna subtract, because the information in this video is very, very, very key. So please rewatch as much as you want, take notes, and if you have further questions, please reach out, and we're gonna endeavor to give you all the information you need. From us tonight, we say good night. If you haven't shared, if you haven't subscribed, please remember to subscribe, watch all our other videos, and that's how you support this channel. Thank you so much, and have a great night, and I shall see you next time on The Konekt.
Thank you.